What's up, everyone? This is Noa Dalzell, and I'm here with a Sunday mailbag episode of You Got Boston. And I do know that today is a Monday, but I am still going to do it today because this is technically Sunday. I feel like Labor Day weekend is unique in that sense. Just want to make sure my audio here is good. So really excited to be here. Really excited to be literally like 3 weeks in a day away from Celtics Media Day. So I feel like that was hardly an off season. That's the good news. Honestly, I think for me, the fact that we have so little downtime here has been a lot of fun. And I see first I have a question here. Do I cover the WNBA professionally as well? So yeah, that's actually my other job. So I do both concurrently. So for me, this is not really an off season. I'm mostly focusing on WNBA right now, and then we'll be kind of switching over to the NBA more during the season when the games pick up there. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun to be able to cover both. I know a lot of people are kind of entering the WNBA space as fans as well. So always feel free to follow along in that coverage as well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Noa Dalzell. I work with CLNS Media. I do this podcast a couple times a week. You Got Boston. During the season, it's going to be mostly going live and going from places. I'll be on the road covering most of the away games, and we'll be at practices, events, things like that. For now, just doing it from home. I have moved my computer so that you can't see my shoe stand. Was getting lots of negative feedback about the shoe stand, so you can no longer see the shoes. Hopefully that helps people's viewing experience. I know it's still not the most optimal background, but we'll get there. So as always, this is a Q&A episode. I did an episode earlier in the week specifically about the Lonnie Walker training camp deal, which I'm super excited about. So feel free, if you want a full 30 minutes on that, feel free to check that out. In the meantime, because this is a Q&A, I'll be taking cues from all of you. So feel free to submit any questions you have about the Celtics, about the offseason, about NBA things in general. If you have any pressing WNBA questions, always happy to answer those as well. But we'll keep this mostly focused on the Celtics for now. And I also just want to spend some time today, depending on how many questions we have, just previewing next season and just kind of discussing what we can expect as far as the rotation, as far as individual players' growth, and things like that. I think that it's a very unique situation that the Celtics are in. The fact that you have players that are, a roster that's pretty much coming back from a championship year. I don't know that in my lifetime I've seen that type of continuity in basketball, and in seeing an entire team re-sign effectively after winning a championship in their prime. And so, excited about that. I think that'll be a lot of fun as well, to be able to see people continue to get more and more comfortable in their roles. Every year, there's usually a learning curve for a number of players, and this year, I think everybody's going to be kind of in the role that they are used to for the most part, and just kind of continuing to grow in that role. So, I do think the Celtics are going to do great this year. I think that they'll win the championship again, but I would never say that confidently, because it's so hard to win, and it's so hard to win back to back. But I've gotten that question a little bit, just as far as like my general prediction. I don't think they're going to be the best seed in the Eastern Conference. I think they'll probably be like a 2 seed, but I do think they're going to come out of the East and ultimately win the championship. That's my very soft prediction as far as, months before the season is even starting. And then, I think that the hope and the goal is that you stay healthy, right? That's the number one most, top priority when you're talking about the Celtics roster, is that, you obviously have the talent. You've already shown you've had the talent before. So the main thing is you have enough, motivation and cohesion to not break up what you did last year. And that means, like, you don't want to stop playing team basketball. You don't want individual guys to be overly concerned about their own individual pursuits and things like that. So that's the first thing. Then once you're healthy, once you have that and you're healthy, like, I do feel really good about this team's chances to repeat. And so that'll be the talk of the year, the kind of defending the title and seeking out a banner 19, which is my entire life. I feel like I was always banner 18. So I'm sure it's going to be hard to even adjust to say that. But yeah, so I guess that's my initial prediction is a championship. It all starts on October 22nd. That's opening night against the Knicks. You'll have the ring ceremony, the banner raising. Right now, 2 tickets to get in is, I think, around $800, $900 after fees. That's like the cheapest entry. So it's going to be expensive. I do think it's pretty worthwhile just because my philosophy has always been with playoff games, you can spend a lot of money and then if they lose, it like really sucks and then you feel like you shouldn't have gone and you wasted your money. But with the banner raising, it's like you can go and you know that the banner raising is going to happen. Even if they lose that game, it's like it's still a really cool experience. So, not to tell people to go to that game, but that's been my personal philosophy. I bought my dad and my brother tickets to that game. So, that was my calculus. So, in any case, we have media day in 3 weeks. On media day, there'll be training camp for like a week. I'll be going live every single day that week and answering questions, kind of telling you guys the feel and the behind the scenes of how everything's going. And then after that, we'll be going back to regular game playoff coverage. And I'm not going to Abu Dhabi. That's like the one trip I'm not going on. So I will not be in the 2 preseason games that the Celtics have against the Nuggets. So for those of you that don't know, which I'm assuming most normal people don't know this, but Celtics and the Nuggets are playing in Abu Dhabi in the preseason, and there's for that reason they're starting preseason a week early, and so there's going to be like an extra media week for them, and then the rest of the NBA starts a week after that. So that'll be just a kind of a wrinkle for this year as they're going to Abu Dhabi to play in the preseason games, which initially I thought those games were going to be like final rematch games. Like I think maybe the NBA thought that as well a little bit. So obviously the Nuggets did not make the finals, but still a really good game between, a really good series between two of the best teams in the league nonetheless. So gonna start at the top and go through questions. Feel free to submit them. I've been going through like almost every question recently because we haven't had like too many to take, and I'll do like 30 minutes today. So hopefully we'll get to a bunch of these. First question here is, who is the most unique personality on the Celtics? Unique is always an interesting one because on one hand, it's like, what is unique? Is it just like a little bit more unusual? I think Jaylen Brown, in a sense, is unique in just the way that he carries himself, the things that he cares about, the things that he talks about. He's always like up to something. I don't know if you guys have followed his off season at all, but I feel like he's been to like 12 different countries and dropped a rap song and just has been doing a whole lot. So he's unique in the sense that you never really know what you're going to get from him, just as far as media interactions. Sometimes, he comes to the post-game presser and you think he's going to be all mad because they had a bad loss and he's like, not at all. Other times they won, but he didn't like their attention to detail or something. So you kind of never know what to expect with him. So he stands out to me as just a guy that's like maybe less, not like a little bit more of an unusual personality, and not in a bad way, but just I think about a guy like Sam Hauser. He's just like a very normal guy in a sense. Like there was a meet and greet event with him a couple weeks back, and I was watching him interact with the fans, and I was like, okay, like he just seems like literally a guy like any other guy that you've met. He doesn't seem like a celebrity or anything like that. So I'll give that one to Jaylen Brown. I'm assuming there's going to be a lot of Lonnie Walker questions, and I'm already seeing a lot of Lonnie Walker questions. So I'll start there. I guess for those of you that didn't watch the my episode earlier in the week about the Lonnie Walker signing, I'll just say a little bit about how I feel. I think it's a brilliant move just because the upside is totally there. As people know Lonnie Walker, he's a very capable scorer. He's averaged almost 10 points per game on his career. He shot 38% from 3 last season from Brooklyn. And he's like a microwave scorer. Like he can go and check into games and at certain stretches, like really dominate and change the complexion of games. And so to me, like he's somebody that the upside is there. That offensively he can provide you a huge boost. And then defensively, I think he's a little bit more of a question mark. The numbers aren't amazing. But again, if this is a training camp deal, so like you have literally no risk, which is why I haven't seen a ton of criticism about the Lonnie Walker signing, but there should be literally none because there's nothing on the line here. It's not even the 15th roster spot, which initially when Woj reported the signing, it looked like it was the 15th roster spot, which in that case, you lose a little bit of flexibility. And maybe if Porzingis is taking longer, you can't sign that 15th big without it making any moves. But yeah, I think the reality is that expectations have to be somewhat tempered just because of the fact that Lonnie Walker is literally, he wasn't signed by any team in the entire NBA. So it's like, obviously, if he was this well-rounded, all-around player that has no flaws to his game, then like somebody would have picked him up, and not for a veteran minimum or a training camp deal, but for a multi-year contract. But I also do think, and I say this a lot, like I think there's so much luck in being able to put together an NBA career. And there's so much luck in being able to make it. And like I look at a guy like Sam Hauser, Like he easily could have not made it in the NBA, but he was in the right place at the right time, or was surrounded with the right people, and made the right adjustments and improvements to this game. And next thing you know, he's signing a multi-year $40 million deal. So it's like that's you've made it at that point. But in another world, like a couple things go differently for him, and next thing you know, he's unable to even stay in the NBA for more than a few months. So I think Lonnie Walker has had not been able to find the right space, but I do think that if Boston ends up being a good fit for him, like this could be one of the things that turns his career around. He's very well known for the fourth quarter of Game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals in 2023, in which he was on the Lakers and he was against the Warriors. And in the fourth quarter, he checks in scoreless, scores 15 points in that fourth quarter. Lakers win that game, ultimately win that series, advance to the conference finals. And so he has impacted games at moments, but he's never been able to carve out a consistent role. And I guess, Neil, to answer your question, do you think Lonnie Walker will be backing up Drew at the 1 or White at the 2? I view him less. I think I view him more as a 2 than a 1. But it's I think Drew and Derek are both kind of interchangeable, and I think offensively they've run through Derek White as a playmaker more than Drew Holiday for most of the year. So it's certainly not as binary as that, but he probably won't be an early bench rotation player regardless. Like I view Peyton Pritchard as the guy off the bench that's going to come in and run that second unit. He embraced that role last year, and I think he's only going to get better at it as he now has a year of experience under his belt playing that very specific role. And so I view Lonnie Walker as more someone that can provide a scoring punch for that second unit, because right now you have Sam Hauser, who obviously can shoot the lights out, but he's not a huge shot creator. And then you have Pritchard, who can definitely score, but it does depend sometimes on how he's being guarded. And you don't want him to be like the only guy on the court that can create his own shot. And there have been moments like in late game situations when the Celtics are up by 20 where it's like they're struggling to get a basket because it's just Pritchard is the only one really generating. So I do think in general, Lonnie Walker is going to be able to provide that scoring punch for the Celtics, especially alongside a guy like Peyton Pritchard and Sam Hauser. So it's all to me about whether he can hold up defensively. And if he can, he'll carve out a spot in this rotation. And, first thing he has to do is make the roster, because contrary to the initial understanding around this signing is that this is not a 15th roster spot. So this is not a guaranteed thing at all. So we'll see what happens there. Training camp, that'll definitely be the biggest story in training camp as far as whether or not he makes that team, which just goes to show you how little stories there are right now, because ultimately, like, that everybody else is going to be back and, all familiar faces. So that's pretty cool as well. Question here from Southsiders: what's the main threat? Who's the main threat in the East? So it's a tough one, because I feel like I always like to disclaim my opinions and predictions, just because there's so much that can change so quickly. But if I had to pick right now in early September, before we even have preseason or anything, I will say I think the Knicks are the greatest threat. I don't think we ever saw them at full strength last year in the playoffs. I think they're only getting better individually. It's going to come down to how Julius Randle can accentuate that starting group, because they were really good without him in the playoffs. And I thought that they should have beaten Indiana if it wasn't for the fact that they literally they were dealt just the worst injury hand in that series, just in the playoffs in general. If they can stay healthy and you have, Josh Hart doing what he does, Jalen Brunson playing at almost an MVP caliber, level. They, have an OG Anunoby and Mikal Bridges, two good, 3-and-D wings plus. Like, they're more than just 3-and-D wings. Like, they really have a good roster. And I'm a little biased. I mean, we're all biased in our opinions, but I think that they have a lot of players that I really like. So I think that's maybe where some of my positive view of them comes. But they're the team that does stand out. Obviously, there's other teams in the East that are going to be formidable. I think the Pacers are being overlooked, to be honest with you. I think everybody is kind of like neglecting that run that they had. They were the best team, I thought, the Celtics played in that entire postseason run last year. They were the most well-rounded team, and they had an offense that was just incredibly hard to contain, even for a good, versatile defense like the Celtics. And so Pacers are up there, but I don't view them as much of a threat as the Knicks. The Bucks, I do think people are overlooking a bit as well, just because last year they never really came to fruition. You never had Giannis and Dame in the playoffs. They never had Giannis at all in the playoffs. And then even during the season when they were available, they didn't look like the Bucks that people expected them to be when that roster came together. So they're another one that people are probably overlooking, that I do think they'll win at least a playoff series, if not more. And then the 76ers, obviously, Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid and now Paul George, you can't ignore them. I still don't believe in them in the way that maybe it's the Celtics bias of just seeing how the Celtics have beaten them over the years. But Maxey, someone I think is on the brink of becoming a real superstar. So if he starts the year kind of taking another leap after he already took a leap a year prior, that'll make a tremendous difference as well. So um, yeah, those are the teams. I don't know if I'm forgetting anybody. The Knicks, the 76ers, the Pacers. Um, who else did I just have? And then the Heat are, I mean, I always have them in the back of my mind, but I think right now you have to just imagine that they just don't have enough to compete with the Celtics. So we're going to hear from our friends at Game Time quickly. And I guess I mentioned, Game Time can get you to watching the October 22nd opening game. I love going to events right now. It's football season. Love going to football games, concerts, really any events. Living in Boston, you can just put in any event into the Game Time app and you can get the best prices guaranteed. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So all you have to do is figure out what it is you want to attend. For example, I'm looking right now to get tickets for my family for opening night for the Celtics. So I can search that game in, browse through the seats on Game Time Picks. I can already see there's lots of great deals. There are super deals, different tiers of deals. And basically, as I'm looking, I'm able to actually see what the actual perspective of the court is from that particular seats. I have to make sure I don't want to get them seats that are in the balcony that are too far away. I can see what the court view is going to look like from those seats. So that way I'm able to choose without just looking at a seat number, which maybe doesn't mean anything to me. I'm able to see right away that this is a seat that I want to buy for my family members for opening night so that they can see the ring ceremony and the banner raising and all that fun stuff. So Game Time Picks makes curation much easier. It makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. It's all in pricing, so you can use this feature to see the total upfront price. So there's no fees at the checkout. So the price that it says is the price that it is. You get the panoramic view. You get a lowest price guarantee for Game Time. So if you find a lower price elsewhere, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. And there's Game Time ticket coverage. So your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. Great. So I'm going to continue going through some questions here. I got a question from Tom Coolidge. And happy Labor Day to everybody. I appreciate all the kind messages. It has been a very nice, relaxing day, not having to move. So always grateful for that. Question, how do you think Lonnie impacts Pritchard and Springer's minutes off the bench? Will Walker defend well enough to play? I think, Tom, you answered your own question a little bit there. I think if he doesn't defend well enough to play, you have two Springer, who I think is a very, very talented plus defender, and Pritchard, who is a guy that has held his own defensively. They're there to be, and they're available. And so the question for me is like, say Lonnie Walker makes this roster. Obviously, Springer has the defensive edge, and Lonnie Walker has the offensive edge. But it's kind of like which one of those players can fill in the gap and make that leap. I was encouraged very much so by Springer's one summer league game. I was also encouraged by his one G League game that I saw him play this year. And I've also been encouraged by the snippets of him shooting around that I've seen before games and just getting shots up at practice. That being said, all of that, you don't know how that's going to translate to actual basketball. And so with Springer, like I really do hope that he can find a role. I'm a huge Springer fan. I always like to admit my biases here. I think that someone like him who can just defend at the level that he can defend at, like you have to find a place for him. Like I really would love for them to find a way for him to contribute on the court. But yeah, Lonnie Walker just complicates things. And this is the way that it goes in the NBA. Nobody's spot is safe. Not that Springer even really had a spot last year, but I was foreseeing like maybe he comes in and plays some minutes when Derek White and Drew Holiday have a little bit of a lighter load this year, especially early on. I think there will be some rest days and rest games. So Lonnie makes some things more complicated, but it's the same way that, when Sam Hauser was signed, it's like they signed Svi Mihailik last year. And it's like, is that gonna oust Sam Hauser? Like it didn't, obviously, but had he come in and his defense was, didn't make an improvement and his shot was off, like there's another guy that's there ready to go. And so you want that kind of flexibility on the bench. You don't want to be like, I only have one option as the bench scorer, right? I only have one guy off the bench that can come in and defend, right? Like you want to have multiple options, and I think it's a good thing for the Celtics roster, but certainly individual players might lose their minutes if he makes these leaps that need to happen, right? And starting with making the roster, which obviously is not a given, although I would predict that he will. I got a Connecticut Sun question here. I don't know if people follow the Connecticut Sun. If you don't, I do recommend this is the time to tune in. So Connecticut Sun is the WNBA team based in Mohegan Sun Arena, which is about 2 hours from Boston. So it's your team. If you're a Boston Celtics fan, this is your associated WNBA team. They traded for Marina Mabrey last 2 months ago now. It was in July during the Olympic break for the WNBA. She's a almost 15-point per game scorer. And I will just say, I don't want to talk about this too much in case this is not something that people are plugged into, but I think Marina I wasn't of the belief that the Sun could win a championship based on the roster they had earlier. I think that just offensively, they just lacked a scorer. And they lacked somebody, especially when things got bogged down offensively in late game situations. They just needed another piece. I think she is that piece. So I love her fit, and defensively, she's been a surprise. Honestly, I hadn't watched enough of her to realize how much of a plus defender she is. So I do think that they're legitimate contenders now. They're not my pick for winning the championship. I still think the Liberty have the edge, but Marina has been a brilliant midseason trade, almost like a Derek White type trader. I think that she changes the complexion of what they can do moving forward. And that's my plug also for WNBA if you're interested in this, in watching real high stakes basketball right now. WNBA playoffs start in like 3 weeks. So it'll be kind of running concurrently throughout the NBA preseason, and then you have all year just watching NBA. So highly recommend. Question here from Daniel. Do you think the players like Lonnie want to come to Boston with Brad in charge? They have a chance to win, and if they get traded, Brad usually sends the player to a good situation. Absolutely. I do think that the Celtics have a really good reputation right now, and especially with Brad Stevens at the helm. Like it's just there's a good track record of guys getting put in good situations, like Daniel says here. Lamar Stevens, Zelano Banton, they were both traded midseason last year after coming to the Celtics as free agents, and both of them, I think, landed in spots that were good for them, and they were able to excel for the second half of the season. So I think that's a legitimate thing. But above that, I think there's examples like Zvi Mihailovic. I mentioned this earlier this week when talking about Lonnie Walker. When you see a guy ride the bench all year and then go sign a big deal, he signed a $15 million contract. It shows like, hey, like just being a part of a championship team and contributing even in limited doses can raise your stock. And I think they have a really good development program. You've seen guys like Derek White, Grant Williams not be great shooters and then come in and be much better shooters. They were both good shooters, but like they have a really good development program as well. So there's a confluence of factors why someone might want to come to Boston. Certainly you'd rather come to a championship caliber organization than an organization that's been embroiled in years of losing or controversy or whatnot. So yeah, I think it helps. I'm curious. One thing I want to investigate a little bit more is Lonnie Walker's relationship with Derek White, because they were teammates in San Antonio, and I know Derek White is like probably one of the biggest cheerleaders, fans of the organization. So certainly that helps as well. Question here: do you think tired legs played any role in JT's poor shooting at the end of the season and in the Olympics? First of all, definitely. I think it always plays a factor. Whether it was the biggest factor, I would this is conjecture because I don't know exactly what's going on with his shooting slump, but I would guess it's not the number one contributing factor. I would imagine it's more his confidence, and then just like in the Olympics, especially not being able to get into rhythm. I've talked about this a lot, but Jason Tatum is a rhythm shooter. He is somebody that is able to get really, really hot, and all of a sudden he looks like an elite shooter, and then there are times where he just doesn't look like that at all. And obviously everybody wants to get in a rhythm. It's why you warm up. It's why you shoot after practice. But he's on the extreme end of that spectrum of like how much you need to be in rhythm. And I think for that reason, the Olympics, and especially the Olympics of this year, where he had this really inconsistent role and all this spotlight and discussion around it. And then some games he's playing, some games he's not playing. He's checking in at different times. It made a big difference. And I think it really negatively impacted his confidence in his shot. So I would say mentally was like probably number one, and just like the inconsistent role, especially in the Olympics. Maybe in the playoffs, like just having to do so much and getting so much attention on him, having to defensively, rebounding, just extended minutes, obviously playing through June, like it certainly had an impact as well. And there might be some technical things. I mean, the shot looks a little off to me. I try not to be a shot doctor because that's not my job here. But certainly, I think if people have talked about, it looks like there's a little bit of something different in his shot than it used to be, like kind of just the way that he ducks down. That I don't know, maybe that's one of the issues as well. But whatever it is, I'm really, really curious to see how this. Obviously, I hope that his shot is looks better when the season starts, but I'm really curious because it became such a national discourse that it would just be nice to not have to for him to have to think about this or worry about this much more. So yeah, I hope that it's not a thing, but I am curious because I didn't feel like the Olympics was a good enough size, a good enough sample to really like make a big takeaway on like he can shoot now or he can't shoot now. Like his shot's cooked. Like I just felt like the Olympics was not a good spot for him. And Steph Curry, I mean, obviously last few games they were incredible, but for a big portion of the Olympics, like he was struggling, and so I do think that there's an element there too. See some comments here about whether Lonnie Walker takes away from Pritchard's development. We'll see. Benji here says, I'm unreasonably confident that we will repeat. Please give me a dose of reality. The best thing that I can say there is that it's really, really unusual and hard to repeat. So I'm sure a lot of fan bases in the last 7 years have thought their team was going to do it. The Nuggets I thought were well positioned. There's the Bucks. There were the 2022 Warriors. I feel like that was a little bit of a different one, but certainly like when you have a team win for the first time in that generation, it's like, okay, let's do this again. And usually it doesn't happen again. So there's your dose of reality. That being said, I do think that this team is as well positioned to do so as any in my lifetime, at least. Benny Jet says, I see Lonnie Walker being in that Gerald Green role when Brad was still coaching. I think that's a good case scenario. If you can get anything out of a training camp deal signing, it's a win. And speaking of Gerald Green, he just won MVP for the Big 3 tournament at TD Garden like 2 weeks ago. And I interviewed him after that game, and he talked about how special it was to be able to do that at TD Garden, as where he considered himself a Celtic still. So I wrote an article about that for SB Nation. Feel free to check that out. But had to plug that since I literally just saw Gerald Green like 10 days ago. Let's see. Question here: what number do you think Lonnie Walker would wear, and what number would you wear when you play club? I'm so bad at numbers. Like I couldn't even tell you the number of like every single Celtics player on the team. Like I know like Tatum 0 and Jaylen Brown is 7, but like I genuinely would not be able to remember everybody else's. I just don't notice people's jersey numbers at all, so I have no idea what numbers are retired and what he'll wear. I wore 23 at one point. I wore 0 at one point. I wore a bunch of numbers too, depending on what team I played. So yeah, no numbers were never. I'm trying to remember. There might have been a number that I had. I did have 23 for a while, and I remember thinking like, not worthy of this number. I don't know why I'm wearing it. So, I got a question here about meat substitutes. For those of you that don't know, I was basically a vegan lobbyist for my first 3 years out of college before starting to do this full time this summer. I won't get into that here just because I would need like way longer. But if anyone's ever curious, I can share more about the environmental impact and all the ethical reasons and societal reasons why I was lobbying for having better options that are plant-based. So if anybody's curious about that, I'm actually working on a big piece about plant-based eating in the NBA and WNBA, so I'll have more there. But I won't bore you guys too much on this show on this topic, just in case people are not interested. But I appreciate someone finding that out about me. Okay, I'm a little bit behind on these comments, but I see someone wrote kind of really shocked that Cornette didn't win most unique. What this is in reference to me talking about who has the most unique personalities on the team. And Damon is correct. It should have been Cornette over Jaylen Brown. I forgot at the time. And that shows you that I haven't been around the Celtics for a couple of weeks now, because if I had, then I would have probably said Luke Cornette instinctively, because just being around him for like 5 minutes is just a riot. So would have been him. We only have a couple more minutes, so I'm gonna go through and just kind of run through these. Which big will have? I love these kinds of questions because this is just a total prediction. Which big will have a bigger impact coming off the bench? Tillman, Cornette, or Keita? The case for Cornette is continuity. He's done it before. He's familiar with the system. Of those 3 guys, he had the biggest role last year, obviously. The case for Keita is the upside. like because he's younger, because he hasn't had nearly as much NBA experience under his belt, you can imagine more for him. That could potentially be, you can have loftier goals for him. Like I think at this point, Cornette is who he is, and Keita, there's less certainty around what his limits are. Um, and then with Tillman, he's just so solid. But I don't know that we'll see anything different from him than what we saw last year, besides for maybe more shots because he didn't shoot a whole lot and he wasn't super consistent in the shots that he did shoot. I think he's a better shooter than his numbers were with the Celtics last year. So I guess saying all that, if I had to pick one, I'm gonna go with Keita, and this is one of those takes where like I'm just gonna disclaim I could totally be wrong. You can come back to me and tell me like once Keita is a DNP for the entire season, come back to me and tell me. I'll own this being a bad take, but I think Keita can give them like rim protection and offensive rebounding and like finishing around the rim and a lob threat, in the way that the others can't. Um, Cornette has improved his lob there, but I think that at his best, like for the vision that I have for Nemish Keita, like he can do things that the other two just can't. And so they're gonna give that a shot. And if it doesn't pan out, because defensively he made a lot of mistakes last year in his minutes, like if he can't be consistent and be solid when he does play, um, then yeah, I think you're gonna find him in this, out of the rotation. But if he can do it, he knocks those two guys out. So I'm gonna go with Keita, but we'll see soon. It will be matchup dependent. We saw certain stretches of the season where it was Keita was the first off the bench. Sometimes it was Luke. Tillman came in the playoffs and gave them some obviously really good minutes. So there's going to be moments that they each have, and I think together they're kind of playing this backup center role, which is pretty cool. But I'll go with Keita for now, and I'd be curious if I did like a poll amongst like Celtics media and Celtics fans. I bet it would be like a pretty even split between those three guys. I don't think there's like an obvious winner there. At least to me, there's not. Question here from Damon on where do you think O'Shea ends up? I just really hope he ends up in the NBA. I don't know where. I'd have to look at what teams are even eligible right now. I haven't looked at like the most updated list of rosters on each team, but O'Shea had a player option. I don't know if everybody knows that, but like he signed a 2-year deal last summer with a player option, so he could sign with the Celtics again if he wanted to. All he had to do was opt in, and he opted out. I think kind of betting on himself that he could find something better, maybe a longer term deal, maybe a role with more minutes elsewhere. And so far, he hasn't been able to find that. And so I'm sure that he is a little bit anxious right now. If he doesn't find a team, like that's on him and his agent that they made the wrong call. And like I said when talking about Lonnie Walker, like there's just a lot of luck in this business and finding the right home. And maybe O'Shea Brissett made the wrong move and he ran out of luck here and he is not going to be in the league next year. But I really hope he finds a spot because just from an energy team perspective, like he seems to me from what I was able to gauge and talk to people, like the most outstanding teammate you can imagine. Such a great energy guy. And then every time he came in, I thought he'd make good things happen. He has limitations offensively, but he really did make good things happen. So I'd have to get back to you with specific teams, but I'll just say I really hope that he's able to get it done. Question here from DeMarco. Do you think Westbrook can be a sixth man of the year in Denver with their weak bench? I really like Westbrook, but I haven't been able to see him. I don't know that he's a great fit there. I honestly think people are forgetting that he's on Denver. I've been hearing about Denver's offseason. Everybody's like, they got nobody and they lost KCP. I would love him to be sixth man of the year. I don't think so, though. I don't think that he can get it done. I don't know. I also have a feeling that he's going to end up starting a lot of games just with the injuries that team has had, and Jamal Murray probably will get some rest. So in that sense, it's like he might not even qualify. I have a feeling he'll be more of a starter than people maybe would hope or expect at this point. But I'm not going to lock him in as my sixth man of the year prediction. I have to think about who it is, though. I usually like to think about these awards in the off season. Maybe in my next episode, I'll share all my award predictions. I don't have a vote, obviously. I mean, people sometimes have asked me that. It's like I'm a million degrees away from having a media vote. But I'll just share my ballot. So that's a good inspiration, DeMarco. I'll do that for the next episode. Maybe we'll do that at the end. Just some quick votes. Appreciate all the nice comments here. Question here about best Al replacement. I'm going to rapid fire these last few here, just because we've been going for a while, but I'll rapid fire these briefly. think we're still a few years away from an Al replacement. Um, Ideally, like Anton Watson, not to be like too much of a homer, but the second round pick the Celtics was drafted, but I really watched him closely. I was at Summer League for the entirety of Summer League. I went back and watched some of his college film after he was drafted. I'll admit I did not know who he was before he was drafted. Not gonna lie, but since then I've done a lot of research on him, and I think that he has like the feel and the touch that Al has. Defensively, he's really smart. DJ McClay, the Celtics coach that was leading the the NBA Summer League, he said that he's like already an NBA level defender. So I don't think anybody's going to be Al Horford. Like it's just he's such a unique talent and he's a generational player. But I think as far as like 38-year-old Al, Anton can come in and do some of those things. So yeah, that's my prediction. Question here: Does Jalen and Jason touch the lead from Team USA bias? I think they're both going to come in with a chip on their shoulder that maybe they wouldn't have had otherwise if they just won the championship and had like a fun summer. And they both had like their own share of like chip on their shoulder. Obviously, uh, Jalen Brown more with not being on Team USA, Jason Tatum with being on Team USA, but then not playing and becoming this like big spectacle and like this whole story. So I do think they come in with extra motivation. I just hope it's channeled right because sometimes you can come in and be like, I'm going to show everybody that I'm the guy. And it's like last year they didn't have that and they won the championship. So as long as it's funneled towards like the team and not towards like establishing their own individual value, I think it'll be a good thing. They certainly do both seem, and especially Jalen. I mean, Jalen's been on a tear here online. So you can certainly see that. Question here: talks in WNBA. I'm going to do some more WNBA specific content. I don't know how much overlap there is between the listeners of like this show and WNBA interest, so I won't do too much here. But I will just say I'll plug if you are interested in the WNBA. I cover it full time for SB Nation, sbnation.com/WNBA. You can find all my articles, including an article I wrote yesterday that's been very controversial. So you can check that out and read about my perspective on some of the discourse around Caitlin Clark and the fouls and the league and everything. So do feel free to check that out. And then I'll probably do like another WNBA specific episode like in the next week or two. So I'll share that out when it's there. Specifically on the Connecticut Sun, I think, since that's technically like the affiliated team here. If you are looking to get into the WNBA. And thank you, Tom. This is very helpful to good plug. WNBA season has been awesome. Scratches most of the itch of Celtics withdrawals. I will attest that. Got a quick question here from Neil. Do any of the players in the Celtics wear Ionescu's when they play? I have Sabrina Ionescu's. They're awesome. I love them. I play basketball. I always just get like the cheapest shoes. So I had the Giannis's, no shade to Giannis, but they were like $30 when I bought them online. So I got those. I've played in like the Durant's for a while, the Hades for a while. They were fine, but I saw all the stuff on Sabrina. But actually, what got me to get the Sabrinas is that Peyton Pritchard was asked the question about it in practice. He wears them. He also went to Oregon. They're friends. Drew Holiday's worn them. I think a bunch of players have worn them, but I don't really notice people's shoes. But I know Drew and Peyton have both talked about it. But then I posted like a Peyton Pritchard quote about it. It went super viral. It got like 2 million views, and I kept getting notifications of people like interacting with that tweet. And I was like, I don't even have these shoes, so I went to go order them. Now I have them. They're awesome. Highly recommend. But yeah. Last thing I will say is I just want to have a quick message here from our friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps on PrizePicks, it's just you against the numbers. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play. Even if one of your players gets injured, if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks, your picks are still alive. So right now, if you're watching games, if you're watching basketball, different sports, the injury insurance thing, that can be a lot of fun. That has already benefited me in the past as well. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code CLNS on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. So with that, we will wrap up. I appreciate all of you for tuning in. Very much appreciated. I will just say I'm going to do a couple more episodes this week. I'll do a WNBA specific episode, and then I'll do a Celtics offseason specific episode as well. So with that, thank you all so much. If you have any other questions you want answered, suggestions on how to do this podcast, you can message me on Twitter. My DMs are always open for better or worse. For the last 24 hours, it's been for worse, but they remain open. I like being able to interact with all you guys and hear your thoughts. One thing I'll say is I have definitely want to do like a fan episode here and there. So I'm still figuring out the logistics, but I want to be able to get different fans on and be able to get people to answer their questions and do it all, live time as well. So a lot of you have messaged me about wanting to come on the show. So we will do that at some point of just like a interchangeable thing. I just have to make sure from like a safety online standpoint that I'm doing it well. So that's coming. Lots more content to come in the next few weeks. You can read, as always, my stuff on Celtics blog. You can subscribe. I forgot to give the subscribe plug. Please subscribe. My YouTube channel is You Got Boston. You can also subscribe to CLNS and get all the different podcasts. But if you're watching this on CLNS, if you subscribe to You Got Boston, you will never miss an episode. It's literally just my episodes. So please do that. You can also watch on Spotify, Apple. Leave a review, leave a rating, leave comments, likes, shares, share with your friends. As always, appreciated. My name is Noah. Appreciate having you guys all on, and enjoy the rest of your week.